bullshit. Stereotypical bullshit is on the rise. Oh, sit next to me, let's find the time. Oh, to break the walls, break the walls that surround us all. That's and put a middle finger in the sky. Stereotypical bullshit. Stereotypical bullshit.
Well, hello, all my stereotypes. How are you doing? This is episode 3, and today we're going to talk about death with a mom and a coach on tonight's episode of
Stereotypical bullshit.
Hello, once again. Welcome back to the Stereotypical Bullshit Podcast. A couple things I want to get started off with. One being that I did have to pivot. Unfortunately, my soldier couldn't make it today. So I did respin, and the first respin that I got was a coach. So our first stereotype that we'll be talking to is to a mom. The second one is to a coach. And again, we are going to talk about death. You can see the spins. I got it put up on Facebook. You can see that it was all random. But today's topic, again, is death. So the itinerary for this show is I, as a host, is going to talk about death and how it has affected me personally and how it has affected me and my family and, through the eyes of me. Now, if you don't know who I am, you can go back to episode 2. Episode 2 kind of goes in depth as to where I come from, what I have done, why I'm doing this podcast, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and get this started. Death. I've been kind of fortunate enough not to have too much death in my family. I've had my grandmother and my grandfather pass away within the last couple of years. Most recently, my grandfather had passed away a few months ago. He had gotten dementia and was getting real bad. My mother took care of him for quite a while and was able to be a caretaker and watch my grandfather slowly deteriorate. He had what he thought was a stomach ache. It ended up being a heart attack and put him in the hospital. Unfortunately, he was unable to recover. That was kind of hard. We kind of had to do the same thing with my grandmother. My grandmother, I believe she had a miniature stroke, a mild stroke. She laid in bed, unconscious for a day and let us come say goodbye to her. My mom, again, these are my mom's father and mother. And that was the hardest part, was seeing how bad it hurt my mom. Now, we were very, very close to my grandmother and my grandfather. My grandmother, in fact, I have the tattoo of my grandmother's phone number on my arm. It was a staple growing up. We all knew Grandma's phone number, and if we ever needed anything, we would call Grandma, 259-6744. And she would pretty much drop everything that she was doing to come help. That was my grandma. Unfortunately, my grandma was, I wouldn't say taken advantage of, but she was very, very giving to the family. And there was a lot of times where I felt like she was probably giving a little too much and she wasn't doing what was best for her. Later on in life, I felt like she knew that it was coming, and it was hard because she was kind of like the staple, the string that held the whole family together. She was always the level-headed one. She was always the one quick to get in the middle of, bad things happening in the family or trying to prevent things from happening. So that one was hard. Losing Grandma Bobby was probably the hardest death that I've had to deal with. Then grandpa comes along the last couple of months, and it I don't think it hit as hard because we saw him deteriorate as the dementia was taking over his body. Unfortunately, it, he basically turned into like a 3-year-old child. He really didn't know right from wrong. He he acted very much like a child. He would pee himself, piss himself. He would shit himself. And my mom works all day, come home and have to take care of grandpa. And my grandpa was one of the most quick-witted people I've ever met in my life. It didn't matter what you said to him. He always had some funny response to come back. He called me an orangutan growing up because I was the only one in the family that had red hair. And he always made a joke. He always got me those, you remember those trolls? Those dope ass trolls back in the day that had the big hair and stuff. He'd always get me those because he'd always make it a joke that, red hair, you're not part of the family, orangutan. And I spent a lot of time in my early days with my grandfather and my step grandmother. They were, I had an uncle that was only 2 years older than me, and I spent a lot of time with him there at my grandfather's house. And so those were probably the closest one death wise that had, hit me personally. I'm really scared of my, more closer friends or family members passing away. I've had two mother-in-laws pass away, unfortunately. The first, my first marriage, I saw her mother go through stage 4 lung cancer, and it went pretty fast. Once she found out the deterioration of her body went really quick. That was hard, mainly to see my wife at the time be so hurt. It's her mom, and it was pretty much inevitable that it was going to happen, and it was very hard to see something like that happen. And so what we did was we did pretty much all that we could do to help my my sons and my our kids. Luckily, Adeline was around 2 or 3, I think, when for maybe whenever Barb died, and it wasn't. Luckily, it was we didn't have to explain it to her, and she still has some memories of her grandma. Luckily, it wasn't old enough to where it was, more emotional for her. My son-in-law, he it was hard on him. He was 8 or 9, and they lived with their grandma for years and years and years. So to see that happen, it was hard on him, but it wasn't somebody that was very very close to me. I don't do death well. I I absolutely hate funerals. I'll always hate funerals. And I think the main reason I hate funerals is because I think it brings out emotions that I'm scared to feel. You know, the I remember when a good friend of my dad's died, Dick Hardesty. He was a big influence in me with sports, softball in particular. And to see all the softball guys come and wear their jerseys and put Dick to rest, that was a hard one too. I've had a few friends pass away, some that weren't as close as others. There are some that stand out. One in particular was our good friend Randy Pate. Unfortunately, he was in a motorcycle accident. But man, that kid was so funny. One of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. And I do think about Randy a lot. About he left a daughter behind, and he uh, he was just one of those guys that you're going to miss because when you were around him, he just He was the funniest and most outgoing person. Outside of that, there's just been some acquaintances that had passed. There's nothing that had, really stood out as far as being so emotional that I have has made an impact on me. Luckily, I haven't been able or haven't had a major conversation with my kids about death. Now, when my grandpa passed away, all the kids were there, all my kids were there, and was able to say goodbye to grandpa. And my grandpa had a farm, and he had horses, and we would go out there for 4th of July. We would ride four-wheelers, and we would barbecue. We had a pond, so we would fish, shoot guns. Some of the coolest pictures I have are my kids on horses or my kid on four-wheelers. And they weren't old enough to really remember Grandma Bobby, except for my oldest, Michaela. But everybody remembered Grandpa. And that was hard. We talked about, again, we all kind of knew that was coming for Grandpa. So the conversations that we had about Grandpa passing were more along the lines of, how do you feel? What do you let's remember Grandpa for, what do you remember Grandpa for? And I tell them those are the memories that will make Grandpa live on forever. And so having the whole family there to say goodbye to my grandpa was probably one of the hardest things I had to do as far as, dealing with death. I didn't really have to have a major conversation with the kids because they kind of already expected it. But my kids, again, really haven't had too many people in their life die. So I am kind of scared to talk about death to them when something like that does happen. But I do think that the reason why I don't like going to funerals and stuff is because I do want to remember those people for who they were, what they did last time I met them. I don't want to see them, lying there in a casket and that be my last memory. I think that's the main reason why. And a lot of times I wouldn't, I wouldn't go see the body because I don't want to remember them like that. I want to remember my grandma coming to pick me up when my tire was flat in the middle of the rain on 255, or my grandfather being, just a sarcastic asshole all the time in a good way. And as as death approaches, you kind of, especially in my grandfather's situation where we kind of knew something was going to happen eventually, it did kind of ease it because we've already knew that it was going to happen. So it wasn't like unbelievably hard. It wasn't sudden. One of the most sudden deaths I can remember was a good friend of mine, Gary Layton, passed on a motorcycle as well. And he was probably the most well-known person that I knew. And I remember his funeral. I did a lot of people, and that one kind of hit hard too. I wasn't super close to Gary, but I was super close to everybody that Gary was super close with. And to see other people hurt and go through that is, I hate going to a funeral because, again, it does bring up those emotions that I don't know how to manifest. I don't know how to put those out into the world. I don't know what to feel, how to present how I feel. I'm just sad. And sometimes being sad is, we all kind of go through our own actions and feelings. And so, again, death hasn't hit my doorstep as hard as other people's. And I think that's why talking to a mom and then talking to a coach about death will kind of give us a perspective as to if something did happen, how would they how would they feel? What would you say to your kids? What would you say to your players if something like that happened? And so again, luckily I haven't had anybody super close to me pass. I'm deathly afraid of time and it taking away the people that I do love. You know, we're all getting older. That means our moms and dads are all getting older. And, death is inevitable. It, it happens to all of us. And so I think that's the hardest feeling that you can have as a human is losing someone that you know you'll never get back. And so I've been fortunate enough not to feel a lot of sadness. And that's where my empathy comes in for people who have felt that. Again, one of the worst things is going to funerals and seeing all the people sad. They're more sad than me because they were closer to these people. And as I sit and I think about what death could do to me if somebody close to me, it's almost like I think of it and I throw it away. I just, I don't want it to manifest. I don't want to think about those things because it is sad. I don't want to lose my mom. I don't want to lose my dad or anybody that's, close to me. I've seen parents lose their kids. I think that the kids should always outlive their parents. Having a kid pass in any situation to me would probably be the hardest. Again, luckily I haven't had that happen to me, but I know people who have, and I know it's a weight and a something that is hard to talk about. And so by learning how to cope with death is something I don't look forward to. I know other people who have gone through a lot of death. Like my best friend, his brother had MS and was in a wheelchair. He outlived his, proposed dates. He was, I think Kyle was about 21 when he finally passed away. And that was the one friend, the one that really, he was my brother. Josh was my best friend and Kyle was my best friend's brother. So he was essentially my brother as well. And so by knowing Kyle, and again, we were always told that he outlived. He called him Superman because he just kept fighting. And so, unfortunately, when he did pass, it was, I think at the time, the hardest hit that I had ever been for anybody dying in my family or in my life. And so what tends to happen is I sheltered myself from all the sadness, but I did try to be there for Josh and Teresa and Jeff as much as I can, much as I could. I know, again, I I know how hard it was on them to lose a child, and still this day, Kyle's popping willies and looking down on his family, and they're very fortunate. Josh is an amazing person. So is his mom and dad. And so I wouldn't necessarily say that, Kyle's death did anything but make things, make them a better people because they lost somebody they truly loved and they knew by living true and then living with the grace of, you know, everything. Luckily, luckily I was fortunate enough to know Kyle, and I that again that was probably the hardest one that I remember feeling like I really lost somebody that I would never get back. And a lot of it again was because I was looking at my friends and my, you know, I was their adopted son. So I was looking at my adopted, mom and dad just be heartbroken over losing a kid. And I can see how that would be the absolute worst for anybody. As I get older, I know that death is going to be coming for the people around me, even for me. It's one of my biggest fears. And I am not very religious. I'm spiritual for the most part, but I don't think that the idea of heaven is for me. But I do feel like Kyle and my grandma and my grandpa are somewhere, and their impact on our lives is never ending. And because of that, I try to keep their memories alive in my head by remembering the good times. Remember just everything that made them who they were. And because I met them in my life and the time that I did, they helped shape who I am today. And so, fortunate enough not to have to deal with a lot of death. And so, again, as I get older, I know it's coming for me. I try to be as healthy as I can. Sometimes, I try to hit the gym and try to be healthy physically. I don't eat very well. I have a bad sugar addiction. I love me some candy, but I don't want to die. I don't want to see the people around me die. I'm kind of hoping that my generation is able to find the fountain of youth somewhere and be able to keep us alive longer. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, we all know that we're going to be losing these people that we love eventually. And so I look at it like I don't want to think about death. I would just rather live in the moment. If and when it happens, it'll happen. I'll deal with it then. And so that's my view on death. That is how it's affected me. I don't unfortunately don't think that it has shaped me as much as it has shaped other people. And I think the reason for that is because I haven't had that many people, die that was super close to me. I don't ever wish that on anybody to have anybody in their life close to them die. But we all know that it's inevitable. And so I look at death like we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And so I don't dwell on, I'm trying to be very positive, especially like when Barb had passed in the lung cancer, you know, I just kept telling my wife at the time that she'll be fine. She'll make it out. She'll be great. She's a strong person. Same thing with my grandpa. My grandma's was pretty sudden. There wasn't nothing that they could do about that. But, uh, you know, that's how I feel I have to deal with it is try to be positive, try to be there for them, empathetic as much as I can, positivity. If I think it reestablishes how I feel about it. Like, it helps me feel good about the situation by being positive. It helps the people around me that's going through the same thing be positive. And I think that's really all that I can do. Now, after death does hit, I have a very hard time consoling people. I don't know how to say, I'm sorry for them. I'm there for them. I know that's pretty much all you say and all you can really do, but sometimes I feel like it's not enough for those people. That just being there for them just isn't enough. And I know it probably is. And I know that the love that they get, that even I got when my grandfather passed away, when my grandmother passed away, that it does help to be recognized as somebody who is sad. And being somebody else out there who is positive really does give the people who have lost someone a sense of security, a sense of compassion from the people around them. Like when my most recent ex-wife, her mom had passed, and she was a nurse, and hearing all of the people that worked with her over the last 40 some odd years talk about her, those those stories are the band-aids for the sadness. And I know that I've tried to do that. I've tried to be as positive as possible, which is why I don't like seeing them laying in the casket, because I do want to remember them as the people that I remember them as, not the dead person laying in the casket. And so I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way, but me personally, I'm thankful that I haven't had anybody super close outside of my grandmother and grandfather that that would make me feel so overwhelmingly sad that I wouldn't know how to, come back from that. Now, my past wives, both of them had lost their mothers. And so I, as a significant other, I wouldn't have to say tiptoe around certain things, but it was really hard to, I'm going to go talk to my mom, want to go hang out with my mom, knowing that they can't hang out with their mom. And that's sad to me too. The last thing I want is the people that I love to feel sad or bad about the death. So again, I'm thankful for the people that have consoled me over the years. So, through deaths of certain people, it does help. So if you know somebody that is going through the sadness of a loved one passing away, reach out, tell them that you're there, give them the opportunity to reach out to you if they feel like they need to talk or vent, or, just talk and remember the person that they left. So that's kind of my stance on death. I luckily haven't had too much to deal with it, but it is one of my biggest fears, is having somebody super close and not knowing how to cope with that sadness. I've seen it through my mom. My mom, she'll go through spurts where she just, my grandma died, I think, on Christmas. So Christmas is hard for my mom. It's hard for all of us because we always remember grandma. And so to me, I don't look like we lost grandma. To me, every Christmas is now a remembrance of grandma. Now we got to have even more fun. Now we got to have, more of a memory through the whole family, so that we can honor our grandma through that, through being happy, through getting the family together and making things better for all of the family. And so as we get older, we all know it's inevitable. The only thing that I can say is that try to be as positive as you can for the people around you, even if it is you who is the super sad one, the one that is affected the most. The people that are coming to you to tell you all these things are doing it for the betterment of you. So if you need to reach out to somebody. If somebody offers a lending hand, if you can't get out of bed because your significant other just passed away, get some help. Let somebody come clean your house. Let somebody bring you some food. There are people who will and can do that for you. You just got to allow them to do that. And if you allow them to do that, I think the sadness will be somewhat deflated or minimized. That will help you get through this particular death. And so as we move forward in life, just try to be as positive and open to people who have lost somebody that they loved. Reach out to them and be kind. Be kind. That's really all I can say. And with that said, you understand that I unfortunately or fortunately can't speak too heavily on death because it has not happened to me nearly as much as some other people. I kind of feel guilty about that, but then again, I don't. I'm thankful that there hasn't been too many people pass around me, but I've seen friends have lost mom and dad, a significant other, like back to back to back. And the only thing I can do is reach out, be positive, and just, love them through one of the saddest parts of their life. Okay. So that's me on death. Up next, we're going to talk to a mom. And after we go through speaking with the mom, I will get in contact with the coach. We will have a small conversation with them as well. But right now, what I need you to do is take a listen to my sponsors. Do what you can to support them. These guys aren't paying me anything to be a part of this podcast. They are just great friends who do great things for good people. So support them as much as you can. So here's our sponsors. We'll come back with our mom. First off, I want to thank my supporters who sponsor this podcast. I suggest you go out and support my sponsors. Sponsor number one, HC Remodeling. If you need a kitchen, a bathroom, or anything in your home remodeled, fixed up, give HC Remodeling a call. Call Wiley at 618-410-4245. That's 618-410-4245. Rhino Enterprises. If you need something hauled from point A to point B, whether it's from here to New York or from New York to LA, give Ryan a call at 618-581-9432. That's 581-9432. Skin by Michaela. My daughter, she's an esthetician. She will make your ugly face pretty again. I'll promise you. Give Kayla a call at 618-610-9718. That's 610-9718. Top Tier Pressure Washing. Call Aaron for all your pressure washing needs. He will shoot high pressure water at anything to make it beautiful again. Call Aaron at 618-610-6578. That's 610-6578. Sheets Garage. If you have an automotive problem, give Josh a call. He'll fix anything and everything. He would rather work on Chevys, but he'll fix anything. Give Josh a call at 618-917-4786. That's 917-4786. K9 Unit. For all your entertainment needs, go to K9 Unit Productions on YouTube.com. That's K9 Unit Productions on YouTube.com. He has all your entertainment needs, whether it's a podcast talking about movies, TVs, gambling, sports, cornhole. He has it all. Go see Wally. Go subscribe to his channel. It's K9 Unit Productions on YouTube. Next is Cornhole with Smooth. He is bringing the community together one bag at a time through the game of cornhole. For all your cornhole content, go to Cornhole with Smooth on YouTube.com. Cornhole with Smooth on YouTube.com. GRHL, the Gateway Roller Hockey League. I am a board member in the GRHL, and we are looking for more hockey players. We play roller hockey in Edwardsville. We need players from all skill levels. If you just want to play organized hockey again, go to gatewayrollerhockey.com, go to waivers, sign up, come down and play some hockey. We are also looking for sponsors. So if you're wanting to sponsor the GRHL, get in contact with me in the description below. Shoot me an email. Last but not least, I am sponsored by Dubby Energy Drink. It is a powered, no jitter energy drink. Shake it up, get going. They have tons of flavors, cool company, and with everything, including Dubby, let them know Super Quick sent you, and they will do what they can to get you a small discount. Again, use the code Super Quick through Dubby or any other sponsors. Let them know that I sent you. Again, support these sponsors because they support me. Thank you very much. Deuces. Okay, and we're back. We got our stereotype, which is a mom, not my mom, a mom. But this mom is actually very close to me. It's my sister. She's a very, very good representative of a mom. She's got 4 kids. The oldest is 15, is that right?
Yes.
And then we've got Caden, who is 11,
Yep.
Eli, who is 4.
Nope, he just turned 5.
Oh, he's 5 now. Okay. And then we got little baby. How old is
Yep.
little baby now?
She's 1.5.
Oh,
She'll be 2 in June.
the sweetest, most bitchiest little girl I've ever met in my life. She is definitely a mama's girl.
Yes.
Okay, Ash, so as a mom, I need you to talk about death. Okay? So basically, what we'll do is I need you to explain to me through the eyes of a mom. I'll ask questions about death, and I need you to respond to me in as a mom. I'll always say, as a mom, do you or will you, and present a question. So we're not talking about Ashley. We're talking about you being a mom. So with that said, as a mom, have you felt as if death has been a big part of you and your kids' life at all?
Absolutely.
And where does that come from? Who has passed away in your kids' life that is is I don't know, has had such an impact on you and your kids' life?
That would be Kyle, and that is the older two's father back in 2016.
Now, when Kyle passed away, as a mom, did you feel as if you're you were responsible for their sadness and their happiness and their outlook on death of their father?
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Did you ever have hard conversations? Now I know that Bentley was the oldest and probably the most affected by that. Am I correct?
Yes.
Do you feel as if the death of his dad really kind of helped shape how good of a kid that he is becoming?
Possibly, yes. And not only that, but what he's after that and what I went through as well.
Right. Now, Caden being younger, do you feel as if like he's asking more questions now compared to back then? Because he was only a few years old when Kyle had passed.
Yeah, he was actually a year old when Kyle passed. So he definitely don't remember him. And now more than ever, he's asking a lot more questions. What was dad's favorite color? So his favorite color is now baby blue. Did dad do this? What's dad's favorite candy? I know you said dad liked gooey butter cakes, and he asks so many questions, and not to mention he looks exactly like him.
He
So
does.
his smile, his goofy laugh, anything literally brings out Kyle. And I always say that. And he's like, "Why you always say that?" I'm like, "Because you literally are your mini dad."
Well, that I mean, to me, that's kind of what I was talking about earlier. That's those memories that we have of Kyle and of grandma and grandpa. Those are the things that, to me, I hate feeling sad about those things. So I always try to keep those type of memories in my head so that I remember them for that. Now, as a mom, do you feel as if Bentley is maybe afraid to talk about that stuff now because he saw it happening in real time?
Yes, 100%. Bentley literally doesn't talk about much or feelings himself as it is right now or ever. I do remember when Kyle passed away and Lindsay had him while I was at the hospital that week. I was telling him I did work two jobs at that time. So he just thought I was working all the time and not at the hospital. So when he overheard a conversation with me and Lindsay on speakerphone one day, he heard the word hospital. So he did call me and I did run out in the hallway and he's like, "Why are you at a hospital?" So I literally had to tell him on FaceTime what was going on with his dad. Um, I do know I stayed with Lindsay a while after that happened because I just bought a house. Me and Kyle did, and I didn't want to go into it yet. And he did go to my friend Savannah and asked her like where his dad was because she just lost a young baby herself, so she knew a lot more about like death and that. But he never once came up to me and asked her anything. So Bentley does shut down a lot and don't show his feelings, especially when it comes to stuff like that. There is a couple times he might say something about his dad, but really he don't say too much. I think it's because he was old enough to understand what was going on. And not to mention, like I said, I did work two jobs and Kyle was a stay-at-home dad. So Bentley was with his dad a lot.
Yeah, I do remember that. And do you feel like do you feel like Bentley is able to, I don't know, maybe console Caden? Do you think that they maybe, Caden kind of goes up to him to ask about dad, or do you feel as if Caden, how would I say, Caden kind of knows that it hurts Bentley, so he kind of stays away from the subject?
I could see both in that. I can see them talking about their dad, when they're alone and stuff. But then again, I know Caden, as a mama's boy as well,
Mhm.
knows that that is a hard situation for Bentley. So
Yeah.
I'm sure things come up at times where they do talk about him, or maybe Caden asks questions. But mainly, it's Caden's coming up to me asking them that I know of. Like I said, I mean, they could probably do it in their own time.
Yeah, and do you feel as if, well, we kind of talked about it, like because Bentley is saw it so early, you kind of have two totally separate views of death for your children. One saw it pretty first-handedly, the other one not so much. So he's kind of learning as he grows older. And so does that, as a mom, does that affect the way that you will present that to baby? Or I know little Chucky will have a hard issue. He was there with grandpa, he really didn't know what was going on. But do you feel as if because the other kids had gone through that it would be easier to talk to the other kids about death?
Like
Like
like through like
say somebody had just passed, like grandma and grandpa.
okay, okay, yeah. Yeah, I could say that. Like you said, Chucky was with Grandpa a lot due to mom babysitting him while I'm at work. So like
Yeah.
he does actually talk a lot about Grandpa and stuff. About like we were at the hospital getting some X-rays done, and he noticed it was the same hospital Grandpa was in that day he
Oh.
died. And he was like, "Can we go upstairs and see Grandpa?" And I had to explain to him like, Grandpa's not there. He went to heaven. But I mean, I as in like just a death regular, yeah, but like as like their father, like the older two boys were. It's sad to say the two younger ones don't really know their dad at all. So like if it came to like the father passing, it wouldn't really be a problem. But
Right.
in death in general, I think it would. I mean, we have Kyle's urn up on the TV by the TV stand, so I and my grandma. So Elijah always talks, your grandma, or, Missy's touching your grandma, or, he asked a lot of questions like, what's, his dad's name. So now that he says, like Kyle up there, and stuff like that. So I mean, I think just going through what we went through and like with grandpa and that, like it would be easier probably to explain to them.
because you've kind of gone through it with the other ones,
Oh yeah.
which is
Right.
also good too because with the older ones, Bentley's great with his brothers and sisters. So I
Oh
would
yeah.
feel as if Bentley would be kind of like that experienced kid who would be able to, talk to his siblings about something. I know out of all the kids, I know, Chucky was kind of the one closest to Grandpa. I don't think, again, we grew up with Grandpa, but like,
Right.
Baby and, uh, you know, Caden and with all that, because even with my kids, with Logan and Addie and them, they didn't have enough time with Grandpa or, the hardest person that had died for me personally was Grandma.
Right.
Because we knew grandma her whole life, my whole life. And so I think that kids who experience death at an early age are so fortunate to kind of like, oh,
Be
okay, I'm
ready
sad
for it.
now, but they have their life to live, so it's easier for them to get over death sometimes. Now through being a mom, do you feel as if those are hard conversations that it kind of scares you to talk about? Or
Yes.
are you familiar with it enough to where you feel as if you would be, more apt to be more, I don't know, logical and being able to talk to the kids because of the experiences that you had?
Both. Definitely more experience because I've had to do it before, um, a couple times, but just death in general just really scares me. So it's always a tough and like emotional conversation that I would have to have.
Do you feel as if as being a mom that you can't show your full emotions when death hits you because you have to be such a strong person for the kids?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And do you feel as a mom that because you have to hide your emotions that it's how would I say that it hurts you as a person that you have to be so strong all the time and not be willing to take, feel all of the sadness because you have to be strong for the kids.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And as a mom, I guess, do you would you say that your biggest fear would be to lose your kids?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I was
And
saying
I've had
earlier,
to
I was
go ahead.
saying earlier that I would think that would be the hardest thing to do in life. Would be, I always say that the kids should outlive their mother or their father. You should
Yes,
put your kids, you should put your parents to rest, not not the uh how would I say, not the other way around. You shouldn't be burying your
yeah.
kids. And I think because of that, I think that is why we try to be so good and be such good parents to our kids, is because that is, to me, would be the biggest fear as a mom or a dad, right?
Oh yeah.
So with all of the death that you had seen very, very close, especially in Kyle's sense, he was on life support for about a week, wasn't he?
Yeah, a week, yep. 1
So
week.
so you had to beat around the bush and hide certain things from the kids. Do you as a mom, do you regret that now?
Um, to an extent a little bit. I did have a counselor while I was at the hospital, and I actually got it because I had to ask them like, what should I tell my kids? And I actually had the appointment with her when I came in the hospital that day, and it literally went from a 360, and they were just like, he's not going to make it, period. So I really didn't have too much time to talk with that counselor to tell me how to go about telling my children about it. Um, and that at that time is when Bentley called me, hearing that I was at the hospital. So it was like an on spot thing, me having to tell him on FaceTime what was going on with his father,
Yeah.
which was which was very, very hard to see his reaction on that.
Yeah. Now with everything that had happened, especially like in Bentley's situation, do you feel that because you Bentley was old enough to understand what was happening, that the that you were afraid that Caden would be, I guess, the opposite, where he it is like it was like a bigger deal to Caden now, because he didn't know anything. And so, as a mom, do you feel like that was, I wouldn't say beneficial that he was younger, but does that kind of help you to know that he didn't feel as much pain as Bentley did?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And then there for the longest time, I actually didn't even tell the kids the true story on actually what was happening.
Right,
They just knew that their dad was sick for the longest time.
right. And so,
So yes, Caden being younger, I mean, truthfully, I wish both of them was that young so I could have just grown up and just let them know, hey, you were deeply loved by your father, but he's not here with us, blah blah blah. But then again, there's a part of me glad that at least Bentley got to share those memories that he did have with his dad, so
yeah.
he can reminisce on those.
Do you ever, as a mom, do you actually ever sit and maybe talk to Bentley about dad at all? Does that kind of scare you, or are you afraid that that might open up some old wounds in Bentley?
Oh yeah, I definitely know it would. Like I said, Bentley's really hard to talk to, especially with emotions like that. I don't even really know if he would really still open up. He would just kind of shake his head on some questions that I asked him. And I know definitely for sure that it would open some wounds for him, for sure.
Now, as a mom, do you are you afraid of that, or would you welcome that in a sense that do you feel as if maybe he's harboring some unspoken feelings that maybe if he did talk about those things that maybe he wouldn't harbor so much pain from it? Are you afraid that maybe that you're not doing enough to get that type of feeling and emotion out of him?
I would say, yeah, I would say I'm afraid, yeah.
So I guess
Not afraid. I wouldn't say that I'm fully afraid of just asking him. I'm afraid of what might bring of it.
yeah,
It,
his
it might ask,
responses.
yeah.
And do you think that maybe his responses would be, you know, because in my head, I feel as if, just like if you talk about it, maybe he'll feel better about it. And maybe nobody's really had those conversations with him. Now, you've had conversations with him about it, but like, sit him down and, be like, I know it's been a while since we talked about it. Do you have, any questions or feelings about dad? Do you want to talk about dad at all? Do you not do that because you're just afraid that his feelings are going to be upset? Or are you not doing it because you feel as if it would hurt? You won't be as strong to hear those responses, if you know what I mean?
Both. Yeah,
Yeah.
both for sure.
Because he's
Oh yeah.
talking about it and now you're breaking down. Now he sees mom hurts. Now he's getting, not just talking about dad. Now he has to help.
Worry about mom being hurt. Right.
Right, right. And so I guess my final question would be is, since you've dealt with it so closely and as a mom, what would you tell another mom, to how would you tell another mom to go about speaking about death to their children?
Um, no matter what the situation is. Damn it, Jason.
because I think this is probably the most important question, because it does, by your answer, you're answering it with what you want to happen as well. And I think that you, like the previous question, is that it's hard to talk about these things to your kids. Mainly because you don't want to be upset in front of them. You don't want them to open up old wounds, especially if you're not really for sure how deep those wounds go. But I think showing your emotion as a mom or a dad to your kids makes you real. It makes you, it validates the feelings that they probably have too. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so,
But just
what would you say to another mom or dad to help calm the storm, so to speak?
pretty much just be open and honest no matter what the situation is. Let them know how much whoever it is, love them, and that you're always there to talk, and maybe not do what I do and just kind of shut it down because, maybe they are suffering a little bit inside and you are scared to not ask them questions to open that wound. Maybe that is a good idea to keep redoing it to make sure that they're okay, not only you.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think sometimes we are selfish when it comes to stuff like that. I know I am. I have a hard time talking to my kids damn near about anything because like I'm to me I'm a parent, and so that comes first. And then when I show emotion or I want to have a conversation with them, I always feel as if maybe I'm not good enough. That the conversation won't be good enough, that I won't ask the right questions, and I won't be able to listen as well as I need to. And by doing those things, I think we kind of do a detriment to ourselves, because I think talking about things, hence why I'm doing this damn podcast, is is so beneficial to the stuff that we harbor. I mean, when was the last time that you've had an actual conversation about Kyle and death and these things?
I couldn't tell you.
Exactly. And so by bringing this up, I know it's sad. I know it's bringing up a lot of emotions that you haven't had in a long time, but you're bringing up much needed emotions, in my opinion. It's hard to hide certain feelings, especially in front of our kids, because our kids know for sure when we are hurting.
Absolutely.
I mean, you got four beautiful kids, and I think that by being open and honest to them about certain things will just make you feel better, but it will also, you're help grow, beautiful children by not letting them sulk in their emotions and their wounds, so to speak. So, you know, I think that you are the perfect person to have this conversation with, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you as my sister. Now you're gonna make me cry. And I'm so happy to see you become the mom that you are. You've gone through a lot, and those kids have gone through a lot. And you're at sectionals, you're at baseball games and all these things. And I think it's because you feel like you have so much making up to do. Then I just
Yeah,
want to tell you that I don't think you have to make up anything. I think that you are one of the best moms in the history of the world. Now there was a couple years where maybe you weren't, but every one of your kids are smart, they're handsome, they're very well rounded, and that would not have happened if you weren't there in any capacity. Now if they had, because of the things that they've seen go through with their mom, I think only validates how beautiful and how grown these kids, and Bentley's one of the most responsible kids that I know from everything that you told me, and so
Hmm.
that wouldn't happen if the things that you've gone through wouldn't have happened,
Right.
So again, thank you for being a great mother. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. And if there is anything else that you would like to say, now would be a great time.
Go Blues. No, I'm just
Go
kidding.
Blues. I love you
All
very,
your
very
blue stuff.
much. And I appreciate your time. And I look forward to talking to you again about something else.
All right. Love
All
you.
right, sis. Love
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye. Man, that was a good conversation. It was a good conversation. I really hope that by hearing how a mom copes with death, that you would be able to talk to your kids about death and hopefully have an impact on their life, make things a little bit easier by having those conversations. Again, Ashley has gone through a lot, and she is one of the best moms I've ever seen. And again, I thank her very, very, very much for putting herself out there and being able to talk about, you know, hard situations. Death is something that is very, very hard for a mom or dad to talk about to kids. And they are conversations that we will have to have eventually. So thank her very, very much. Now, up next is a coach. I know how does death and a coach have anything in common? I got a few questions, and I got a great person who has been coaching for a while, and these are things that maybe a coach has never had to talk about. But if it does come up, maybe the conversation with this coach will help give other coaches an idea as how to deal with certain type of death situations when it comes to being a part of a team. So up next, I'm going to give a call to my buddy Ricky, and he is my coach. Let's give Ricky a call. All right, guys, we're back. Stereotype number 2, like I said, is a coach. And what we try to do is have it completely random. So my coach Ricky has no idea of the topic until this very moment. So everybody give Ricky a round of applause. Yay! As our coach. Coach Ricky, we are going to talk about death. As a coach, I know it might be, something that you haven't had to approach yet. But I do think that for other coaches, like you, I've coached for 10 plus years. How long have you been a coach, Ricky?
Probably about four, off and on for about 10 years. I've been
Okay.
a head coach for four.
Now, as a coach, have you had to deal with, I don't know, like a death of a family member for a player, or maybe even a player's death, or anything along those lines as a coach?
Actually, a couple years ago, I was helping with my daughter's softball team, and her mom had died in the middle of the season. So that's probably the closest death related to being a coach that I could probably throw out there.
Now, as a coach, do you feel as if it was that particular death was an impact on the rest of the team at all?
I think it brought them closer for that season.
Do you feel as if it made that girl, how would I say it, make her, I wouldn't say a better player, but maybe was she more or less focused after the death of her mom?
I mean, she was very distracted. But I think having the girls that showed up and being there for her helped her get through enough to keep playing for a while.
Now, as a coach, do you feel as if it was hard to talk to her about this particular situation?
Uh, as as the assistant coach, yeah, I didn't really have a whole lot to talk about to her, so we didn't talk a lot through it.
Now that you've had that experience, do you feel as if something like that was to happen with you and your boys' team, that you'd be more apt to, I don't know, maybe be able to console or help these kids a little more?
Oh yeah, I'm closer to this team than I was the girls. I think coaching boys and girls through something like that would be very different.
Now, have as a coach, have you had to deal with death in your life to where you have to maybe like you get you get the news of a death, and then you have to go to practice or to a game. As a coach, has that happened to you yet?
Yeah, a few years ago, I lost my real good friend, and I had to keep coaching my son's team. I was an assistant coach back then, and I had to keep helping through that season because it happened in the summertime. So we had baseball tryouts and things like that. So I went kind of rough that year.
Do you feel as if the players noticed that there might have been something wrong with their coach?
Probably not. My son would probably been the only one that knew, and he don't really share, so nobody really knew except maybe the other coaches, family members, parents. Kind of talked to me through it when I was there, but I didn't really try to let the kids know.
Yeah. I know through my personal experience, I really hadn't had to do a whole bunch of that. Uh, as a coach, if something like that was to happen, how would you go about it again? Let's just say, for the sake of hypothesis, if something was to happen to maybe one of your players or one of your players' prominent parents, it's kind of prominent in the team. Do you feel as if you have the the skills or maybe the wherewithal to be able to console and talk to the kids about something like that?
Possibly. I mean, anybody that knows me as a person, as a coach, I pretty much wear my emotions on my sleeve.
You do.
So if I have lost or anything, it's pretty much there. So if it came down to something like that, I don't know. I couldn't answer that because I don't think I would handle it very well. I mean, I would be there. I'd probably be there for the same sense as I am as a person. I would probably put the person that needs me the most first and kind of deal with my emotions second.
Yeah.
Uh, but I don't know if I could handle something like that as well as I should.
I do think that's probably one of the hardest things that a coach would have to do. Cutting kids and telling a kid that he didn't make the team or that he has to sit the bench or he's taking those are hard decisions that a coach has to make, and it's we have to do those things as a coach. This, even though it's kind of hypothetical, I do feel like it would probably be one of the hardest things that we would have to kind of navigate around. Because if something happens to where a kid's mom or dad passed away and all the other kids, spent the night with them and they were very, very well known, do you feel as a coach that you would have to like present it to the team like this is, hey, this is what happened, here's how we'll deal with it? Or would you be more apt to kind of like, I don't know, just let it happen naturally?
I probably would say more than likely I would just have to let it go. I would probably pull the kids and tell them, what happened and to the severity of it, where I would go with that. Uh, and then I would kind of just let them be and tell them if they need anything from me or the other coaches or anything we could help them with, that we would be there.
Yeah.
Uh, as a coach, there's not a whole lot that we can do at this age, other than just be there for them. There's not a whole lot of things that we can step into as a coach. There's also that kind of like fine line of where you go to be you know, as a coach And then if you try to push the limits too far to be friendly, it could go too far. So you have to watch that limit
Yeah.
to where know the parent of that kid, it kind of all that stuff. Because if you push your limits too far, even in a tragic moment like that, it could really turn bad for a coach. Uh, if that person's upset about what's going on and you try to push a little bit too much, things can go sideways and so quickly in today's world that you just don't know what could happen.
Do you feel like as a coach that the reason why we have to scale back some of our emotions is because of the way things are today?
Yes, I do.
Because
Yes, because I mean, back in our day, you got yelled at. You did a lot more running, and you come out of practice, and you're now today you feel like you're sending your kid to practice, and you got to worry about. That's the other thing. You talk about death, but it's not the same sense. But you have a player that has a health condition, and you got to not run them so hard because you don't want them to get, sick or ill or
right,
go anywhere farther than that. So if you don't know a lot of the conditions of today's world, back then we didn't. When we were kids, nobody cared about your condition. You were a kid. You were supposed to be able to run all
yeah,
the time, and it didn't matter about health. Now it's a little bit more out there and WebMD, so you have all the internet doctors out there that can kind of go through it. And I don't know. Just as a coach, you have to be very, very
yeah,
plausible, and I have an idea what your kid. And every kid is different. My kid, you can yell. You need to yell at him to get him to pay attention. And
I,
other kids, you have to hug and you have to tell them they are doing a good job and give them praise and you got to know which kid needs to have that. When you have 12 kids on your team, you don't know how to react to that to some of those kids.
right. I mean, I know personally from a coach, I was still, it was very hard for me to get out of that old school mentality of I'm your coach. Um, this is how we're going to do things. If you don't like it, then, that's too bad. And a lot of times, I don't think it's necessarily the kids anymore as much as it is their parents. Like the kid kind of knows their role, the parents don't know their kids' role. And
Yep.
so by that, if something was to happen, you know, through death of the kids, I do feel as if you have to balance it a lot more, like hard, balance it more so today than you would have had to before. Because in my head, me being a hard coach, I would feel as if I would have to present it, throw it out there. If you guys need to talk, get with me, but it's time to practice. We're here for you. It's kind of like life lessons. One of the best things I've ever seen was a baseball coach took a bunch of kids out and taught them how to change a tire. Those are life lessons. I feel as if coaches before had to show kids life lessons, but now I feel as if we can take it too far. Parents are so sensitive to what a coach can and will do for kids. And I think that on the back end of that, do you feel as if that is probably the hardest thing to navigate as a coach?
Yeah, that's the hardest thing because you don't want to make anybody mad because you have 12 kids. You have to get through a season with. You don't have any backups. You don't have so if you make one or two parents mad and they keep their kids out of practices and games, then you're playing shorthanded. Then you're hurting the kids because your main goal, as you tell a kid all the time, it comes down to life lessons. My biggest thing to the kids is what I'm trying to teach you now is gonna hopefully you're gonna look back at 20 years, 25 years old and say I'm better at showing up on time because Coach Ricky was like, show up on time. This is a big reason that you don't do something correct, you do push-ups. It's kind of like you got to go to work on time or you're not going to have a job.
Now,
So
do
if
you
you
feel as
train
if,
yourself that you can get through that kind of stuff, if you can run all day long and push your body through it, you can get through the death of somebody in your family because now you have an outlet. As a coach, you want to teach your kids that if you have problems in your life, that you show up to practice in a bad mood because you lost a family member or you just had a bad day at school, that, okay, now push through it. Take this hour and a half, play baseball as hard as you can for an hour and a half to 3 hours, however long you're there, practice or a game. And you, I mean, you look at athletes, look at Brett Favre. He had one of the best games of his entire life
The
after
day
the
his
death of
dad
his
died.
dad.
Yeah.
The day of his dad died.
Yep.
I mean, it just and
Situational, I guess.
the reason that he did that is because all these coaches in his life and his parents, they pushed him to learn how to get through adversity in sports, which in turn taught him how to get through adversity in life. Like, that's why athletes can go in there the day of a death of their family and just jump through the game because their parents know that that's their way of honoring them.
Right.
You know, as you know, softball people like me and you are. The day that my friend died, I walked up on the field and put his name in, and I played one of the best games of my life because he was a softball guy.
Yep.
And I wrote his initials in, and I just played probably the best game of my life in that day. And I was batting left-handed because that's what he was, and like it was just one of the. I don't have fun playing softball, but that day I did.
Now, do you feel as if, as a coach, that those life lessons are easier as the kids get older, or do you feel as if something was to happen to, I don't know, say your 8-year-old baseball team compared to a 13-year-old baseball team, do you feel like if something like death would happen in those two different teams, that one would be harder than the other or easier than the other?
Yeah, I think the 8-year-old is going to bounce back a little bit better because he knows what's going on enough, but it's just going to be kind of another day for them that just was a really, really bad day. For a 13, 14-year-old, they're teenagers. Things start to mean a lot more. I mean, I've got two teenagers, and I can tell you that from a coach's standpoint, coaching teenagers is looking at them and saying, you literally, the way they act, like, I really think it could drain some kids. But I also know some kids that have been through bad things that I've coached, and they're just different kids because you could tell that the little things don't bother them anymore.
Yeah.
Lessons that they shouldn't know yet, they're able to, losing a parent or an uncle or something, and you kind of see them in a baseball field looking at it a different. Whereas someone that has it might still take things like their dad showing up to a game for granted, and so they don't play. They play for their parents still, but like that kid that had lost their parent, now they're playing because they knew that's what made that person happy.
Now, as a coach, do you feel like that it's kind of your responsibility to make them forget about that stuff for an hour? Like, I know, like, whenever I play ball and stuff, no matter how sad I am, that's the getaway. That's I don't have to feel those feelings when I'm on the field or whenever I'm playing hockey or, I mean, anything, pickleball, gaming. Do you feel as if you have a sense of responsibility to help the kids go through
Yeah,
those things?
yeah, you want to try to keep their mind off it, and then if that whole hour and a half that you have them for a game or a practice, I mean, as a coach, if this kid wasn't scheduled to play that day, but he lost somebody, you're going to schedule that kid to play now. You don't care whose feelings get hurt. You're going to be like, this kid needs to be on the field.
I need
You
you to,
know,
I need you to,
yes.
be the guy that you was
That way,
yesterday.
he's not sitting on the bench that day thinking, okay, now I'm in trouble. I'm not playing because I lost someone. And coach is trying, like, I don't want that. I want him to say, okay,
You're not trying to feel sorry for him.
yeah, I want him to think that, okay, coach is gonna get me through this his way, and that's by putting him on the field. And if you're brave enough to come play baseball after losing someone close to you, then you need to be on the field to get through it. Like there's that there's no reason to not play a person that is going through something. You
Right.
know, you might not have a bad game. You might have the worst game of your life, but you also might play the best. You might go out there with tears in your eyes, and you might throw a shutout, six strikeout game, and have 3 hits that you've never had. Like, you might just be the best player in the
And
entire.
that literally, that game right there might be the game that turns the switch in their head that this is my sport, this is, I can do this, and adversity, like you were saying.
And that could
I
be a
think.
moment of a lot of things. So yeah, that could be a moment of, okay, my coach has my back. Like, I can do anything as long as I lean on the people that are close to me. Now, coach did it this time, but next time it could be his wife that he has to lean on. Or I mean, it could go the wrong way. It could go, he goes into that game and he has just an absolute atrocity of a game. He gives up 7 home runs and strikes out 3 times looking, and makes an error in the field when he gets in the, like, and then he could be like, okay, maybe baseball's not my sport. But you can't, as a coach, you can't think that way. You got to think, okay, you got to learn how to fight through it.
Yep.
You got to learn to fight through a pain of not only just losing something or death. You have to think about it. Okay, I'm tired. Okay, now you got to push through that. And if kids can't push through that, they can't. You got to know how to push them. And like we said earlier, every kid is going to be different.
Do you feel as if, whenever as a coach, do you feel as if the that you would have pressure from, like, other parents and players to, I don't know, be that rock for the kids?
I think as a coach, you're always going to have that. You're going to have someone that looks up to you for some reason or other, and they're going to want you to be that. And it's going to go the other way. You might you might have a player that is going through something, and he taking a chance on him, and then you might have another parent come up to you and be like, "Why are you putting this kid in the game when my kid was scheduled to play? He just lost us the game because he was emotional." But the comeback on that is, this kid needed it more than that kid a little bit in that day. So they can come at a coach like that, but at the end of the day, if you're just a decent human being, you can understand that this kid needed that game. That kid needed to be out there uh, competing and putting that hour. Just hopefully that brain shuts off. Because,
Hmm.
I mean, as an athlete, you shut that brain off. So when you're a coach, more than likely you are an athlete of that sport of some nature. You might not be the best baseball player in the world, but you understood certain things and you know how to teach it,
Yep.
you know? Or as a coach, you might just be put out there and you're just there because you have a kid on the team and they don't have another coach.
I've coached both baseball, football, and I know that I, when you have 27 kids compared to 12 or 10 for baseball compared to football, you're going to see a lot more things happen over the course of, a season. And I know that whenever I was coaching football, I would have to show up with my cleats because some kids just didn't have cleats. And so I think that the the disconnect now between society and what a coach was before the dynamic is a lot different. Do you feel as a coach that we have to coddle these kids more than we had to in the past?
Certain kids, yes.
Do you
There's
feel as
certain
if
kids
that's a
that are
detriment
still,
to those kids though?
no.
And why not?
I mean, I don't really I have a few kids but I don't, now they're older. When they were 10, we would coddle them more. We pull them in, try to take their feelings into effect. Now, you can't coddle, like, I don't really coddle anybody. Like, I had the best game of my life as a coach last year because I snapped. When I snapped, every kid that I've coddled realized, oh crap, Coach Ricky, who's always been the calm, relaxed coach, I mean, anybody that knows me knows that I don't take much to snap. So when I do, it gets kind of loud, and they just want, I don't have to coddle any of them anymore. And some of the kids that I used to coddle, that when they seen me snap going into this season, they have some of the best attitudes because they're like, oh no, coaches got it. You know, we have two coaches on our team. I'm usually the more relaxed, laid back one, whereas the other coach is drop and give me 20 type of coach.
Right.
You don't do something wrong, you miss a ball. You know, every team, every player on our team has to do 20.
And I
But
think
I do catch myself coddling kids for the reason of you don't know what their day is going through. So if they show up having a bad day, you don't know if they've had what has happened outside of home. They could
right.
have lost someone. They could have had someone picking on them at school that just so you kind of try to have their back to an extent, but you can't once they're on the field, you can't coddle them.
Now, do you
That's
feel
why
as if having a kid on the team too, that if something was to happen with a you know, a player or a parent or whatever, that that you would have to, I don't know, move away from your coaching morals to specifically deal with that particular situation? Or would you be more apt to kind of stay the course, stay the same person, try not to, you know, show any favoritism or whatnot?
uh, I've had that, and I mean I've been approached after a game multiple times, and I just kind of stand there and let them say what they have to say, and then sometimes it's as a coach, it's hard for a kid because, like you said earlier, usually it's not the kid complaining, but then it is also the kid goes home on the ride home and says something to mom and dad because they won't say it to coaches or they won't
Right.
say it to their friends. So you got to know as a coach, well, this probably did happen. This kid probably did go home complaining. But I had an instance a couple years ago that a kid wanted to be a catcher. He wasn't built like a catcher, and he didn't get the catch. I mean, he was just in it, and I got approached about it. And as a coach, you kind of say, "Oh, you're not you're
Right.
not playing now."
Right.
I'm not going to have, and I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't go to a. I would feel like if I went to a coach and said, "My son's not playing, I need him to play." Well, what I'm going to tell my son is when he complains is to do better. To
Yeah.
if you want to be a catcher, then go out and catch off balls off the wall for hours until your knees can't stand it no more. Go to practice and ask to catch a bullpen session and just show that you have what it takes to make the throws, make the catches, like and then I try to explain that to parents. And sometimes they get it once they hear it that way. Sometimes they don't. And it comes
I've been there
down.
personally too. You know, like I had a left-handed pitcher. Mom and dad thought that because he was left-handed, he was going to be the next, you know, left-handed Nolan Ryan. But as a player myself and coaching the kid for the last 5 years, he's not a pitcher, and so he's fast. He ended up becoming our center fielder. The next year, he's playing center field and not pitching, and his dad comes up to me and he's like, you know, you're kind of right about your kid not pitching. Or, you know, my kid not pitching because he's a hell of an outfielder now. And I don't think parents let coaches coach anymore. I think they feel that their kid is the best or their kid needs, you know, more playing time or whatnot. And the older they get, that the less I feel that is happening, you know, because what are you coaching? 13U now?
Yeah.
So next year your son will be in eighth grade.
Yep.
Okay, so you got basically one more year to coach your kid before, or kids, before they get to high school. And to me, high school is where all bullshit stops. You're going to be sat on the bench. You're going to have to go through adversity. You have to be the best player on your team to play. And I think that as a coach, that's kind of what we are supposed to be doing at a, you know, 8 to 13, 8 to 14 is slowly having them know their role in the sport and knowing that it's only going to get harder. And through the eyes of a coach, I feel as if death and trying to, I don't know, accommodate feelings because of that is a little different than most of the decisions that we have to make as a coach, right?
Yeah.
And so,
And,
go ahead.
and you're not. I mean, the thing with death, and it's a hard topic for a coach because you don't really at that age. You're not really unless something happens drastically, and a kid loses a parent, or they get sick. You don't really start seeing stuff like that go bad for kids until they're high school and college, and because I mean, unless they lose a parent or something that you never want to happen, but you're not really going to run into any of that.
Right.
Uh, but
So,
as a coach, like I know if I'm coaching this kids through high school on their select ball team, they're gonna go through all the hardest times of their life, and they're gonna. That's where it comes down to whatever sport, baseball, football. Like I coach baseball, and I think you don't kids don't think you're getting as much life lessons out of a baseball game as maybe you are getting through a football game where you're getting pounded for hours at a time, and then you wake up the next day and you got to go back to practice even though you hurt. Like football and hockey, that kind of sports, they're a little different than baseball, where you're not getting the beating of someone really slamming into you,
mhm.
or
I do
you're
think
getting
that,
the mental part of baseball is more of a mental game where you've got
mhm,
to keep the head in control when you go up the bat and strike out 3 times because the umpire decides he doesn't like you that day and calls 4 pitches outside that are strikes that aren't strikes.
right.
That comes down to if a player is going through a death, if he can learn to battle through the smaller things, I think would be a lot easier to help him get through it because now he knows he can count on himself and
Yeah, I
now he
think
just got to push through it.
I think kids, especially with baseball, just don't understand how failure is such a big part of baseball. You fail 7 out of 3 times or 7 out of 10 times. If you fail 7 out of 10 times at the MLB level, you're probably going to be a Hall of Famer. You know what I mean? And so I don't think kids understand that, especially in baseball. You got 2 strikes on you, step out, take a breath, you have a chance to make it up. If you don't, the only thing that you can do is learn from that failure and get back in the box and hope that your mental toughness can forget about the strikeout or forget about the home run you just gave up and throw and do their best. And I think that when it comes to outside distractions like death, like you said, I do feel as if that will make a player mentally more tough when it comes to sports like baseball because it is so mentally challenging to know you just struck out 3 times, but the very next day you go 4 for 4 or whatever it is. And so I think that that's our biggest job as a coach is to kind of reiterate that failure is just a speed bump on the road of success, you know? So, with that said, Ricky, I got one last question for you. Last question would be, as a coach, what advice would you give to other coaches if a death in the team would happen, and what would you want, or what would you the advice that you would give to a coach to kind of help ease the stress, I guess, through the team? What would your advice be?
It probably just to be, it depends on know the player, um, know your environment as a team. If you're a really close team, close knit, like when we had that happen with the girl's mom, we all showed up for her. We all show every teammate, even though they're 12 years old, had never been to a funeral. My daughter hadn't, and we went to her first funeral because of a teammate. Like, just being there for them, letting them know, letting their families know that you got their back. I think that kind of helped too. Just little things like that. and just knowing your environment. I think that's the biggest part because, like we talked about earlier, every kid is a different environment. Every team is a different environment. And if you have a couple kids that are a little more apt to get into it, they're not. You got to kind of maybe take the mean kid away and try to help him understand what this one is going through. You just got to be a referee in extent, but you also need to be the shoulder to cry on at the same time.
Perfectly said. I agree with everything you said. I think as coaches, we kind of have to be the strongest people in the room. We may not be the smartest or the strongest or fastest, but we do have to be emotionally available for kids when stuff like that happens. And I'm grateful to see you be a success as a coach. I know, like you said, you wear your heart on your sleeve, and sometimes it is hard to distinguish feelings over, coaching and drawing lines between where that is. I'm your coach, not your friend, but I'm your friend when I have to be, And so I really look forward to seeing all the success that you have with the Stallions. Am I right?
Yep.
With the Stallions, and your son's a just like my kid. He's an athlete, and I can't wait to see him get to high school and be a success there. Ricky, I love you. I thank you very, very much for your time, man. And if there's anything else that you would like to say, now would be a great time to say it.
I think what you're doing here is pretty awesome. I appreciate you giving me a chance. Giving a guy that's only been a coach for a couple of years, but I've dealt through 4 or 5 different seasons that have been all different. I appreciate that. And as always, you're one of the most kindest, best people in the world. So I hope all the success to you when it comes to this crap.
Thank you very, very much, my guy. I will get a hold of you here in a little bit. Again, thank you. And everybody, say goodbye to Ricky. Bye, Ricky.
See you guys.
See you later, buddy.
See ya.
Well, there we have it. Our first podcast, or our third podcast, but our first with our stereotypes is in the books. It was a very good conversation I thought we had with a mom and a coach. I really hope that if you're a mom or you're a dad, that you're able to take something from this and be able to talk to your kids about death maybe a little bit easier than you would have before the podcast. And same thing with the coach. Like I was talking to Ricky off air. That's a hard thing to talk about as a coach because I don't think, for one, us coaches go through that very often. And then when we do, it's not like a topic of conversation with other coaches. We don't go to other coaches and say, oh man, we had a mom die, and how did you deal with it? And what can you do to make things better as a coach? And so I really hope that as somebody who coaches and who has coached, I know that those are hard conversations to have because it is a thin line between being a friend and still being a coach and having empathy and not showing certain emotions or showing too much emotion. There's a fine line between that. And I think that good coaches learn how to navigate those things. And I hope that that conversation that we had, me and Ricky as a coach, will help other coaches be able to talk about it and kind of navigate through a death in a team some way, somehow. I couldn't imagine, a player or something like that pass away and then having to, continue a season while that you see the news all the time, a bus wreck with a group of kids or Johnny Goudreau and his brother getting hit a day before his sister's birthday. As a coach for the Columbus Blue Jackets, how do you navigate through that to bring your team back into, you still have to play. We still have to play. So how do you get your teammates or how do you get your team to play after such tragedies? And so having those conversations are good to have. And the number one thing that I think I took out of this podcast and these conversations is that death is just hard. It comes for everybody. And I think that learning how to navigate through death, whether you're a mom or a coach or a teacher or, just anybody, I think it just comes from a good place, empathy, sympathy, just being available for people. It doesn't matter if you're a coach or assistant coach or a doctor or a teacher or a mom. You have to navigate it sometime. And I feel as if something was to happen close to me, that I would be able to talk to my kids a little bit more easily than I would have before this podcast. And same thing if I was coaching. After talking to Ricky, my mind kind of changed, because in my head as a coach, I want to say, hey, I'm sorry for your loss. If you need anything, I'm going to be here, but I need you to step up. You're still the catcher. You're still going to start. And now I feel as if I wouldn't be so coachy. I wouldn't be such a hard ass. I think that I would be a little bit more apt to taking it easy on the kids who are directly affected by it and not show so much favoritism, in a sense that I don't want them to be looked at any different by their teammates because I'm, giving a little bit more emotional awareness to him, the other kid. But I think that these are things that I didn't think that I would ever talk about. These are situations that I didn't think that I would ever have to come across. Again, not too many people in my past that has been super close to me pass away. And so I think knowing that death comes for us all and has dark and has as unwanted conversations to be had through talking about death and how hard those things are has made it easier for me to be able to but be able to talk about those things to people, because now I feel as if I have a direction and not just the same old sending prayers and thoughts. Call me, talk to me. I'll be there for you. I will listen. I will understand. I will help in any way possible. And so I'll leave you guys with this. If somebody did pass away that is close to you and you're struggling, please do everything you can to allow people to help you. If depression and darkness because of a death is taking over, allow friends and family to help. I do think that is a major thing with death and the stereotype of death, that we tend to shy away from talks like these. And so I'm very, very grateful to have Ashley and Ricky on this podcast as a mom and a coach to talk about these things. And so it is kind of weird that we were talking about death on the first real stereotype podcast, but hey man, we started off on a good foot. I think that, again, these are the conversations that we need to have. I really hope that it's helped you, give you the power and the strength to talk about death to your kids or your team, if anything like that was to ever happen. So again, I appreciate every one of you guys that are listening. If you have any questions, any comments or concerns, email the channel and I'll do everything I can to help you guys out, answer any questions that I have. So until then, I really hope that the conversations that we had was beneficial somewhere down the line. And this is kind of the point of the podcast, is to talk about regular shit and not talk about the stereotypical bullshit. I appreciate your time. I can't wait till next week to have more conversations with some more stereotypes. So, peace out, stereotypes. I'm outie. Oof.